DMT is usually talked about as a molecule that takes you somewhere else. People describe impossible geometry, overwhelming meaning, a sense of entering another layer of reality. And because of that, DMT has become surrounded by a very specific kind of story: dreams, death, the pineal gland, and the spirit molecule. It is known as a substance that can radically change someone's reality in a matter of seconds. So obviously, I wanted to know more. And when I started researching where in the body the machinery associated with making it lives, the story became much bigger than I expected. Not just one famous gland, not just one mysterious corner of the brain, but a bigger, wider biological map involving tissues connected to breathing, stress, digestion, reproduction, immunity, and the nervous system. And that is where DMT stopped feeling like a molecule only about altered states and started feeling like a clue hidden inside the body. To begin, DMT stands for N-dimethyltryptamine, which means it belongs to a family of molecules related to tryptophan, an amino acid the body already uses in several important pathways. Tryptophan can move down one pathway towards serotonin, and serotonin can then move toward melatonin. The tryptophan can also move down another pathway toward tryptamine, and from there through methylation steps towards molecules like N-methyltryptamine and DMT. It belongs to a chemical family the body already knows how to use. The pathway to DMT is usually described through two important pieces of enzyme machinery. The first is AADC, which stands for aromatic L amino acid decarboxylase, an enzyme involved in converting tryptophan toward tryptamine. The second is INMT, indole ethylamine N-methyltransferase. INMT is the enzyme most often discussed in relation to DMT. So, if researchers are trying to understand where DMT related chemistry might be found in the body, one thing they can look for is this enzyme. But finding the enzyme machinery is not the same thing as knowing how much DMT is being produced in a tissue. It does mean, though, that the tissue appears to have parts of the biochemical toolkit. And when they looked for that toolkit in human tissues specifically, it did not show up in one mysterious place. It was found all over. Reviews describe INMT as being expressed primarily in peripheral tissues, especially the lungs, thyroid, and adrenal glands. Other reports include the placenta, skeletal muscle, heart, small intestine, stomach, retina, pancreas, and lymph nodes. And newer work has also reported INMT transcripts in human brain tissue, including the medial frontal cortex and choroid plexus. So, even before we talk about what any of this means, we now know that there are important pieces of DMT related chemistry that have been found in multiple parts of the human body. And what I find interesting is not just that it appears in more than one place, it is where those places are. The lungs connect this chemistry to breathing, the adrenal glands and thyroid connected to stress, metabolism, and hormones, the stomach, small intestine, and pancreas connected to digestion. The placenta connects it to pregnancy and development. The lymph nodes connect it to immune function. The heart and skeletal muscle connect it to circulation and movement. And the retina, cerebral cortex, and choroid plexus connect it to perception, the nervous system, and the fluid environment around the brain. DMT is famous because what it can do to consciousness, but the biology points us towards something wider than consciousness alone. Now, some of you may have noticed that I've not mentioned the pineal gland yet, so let's talk about it, because this is usually the first place people associate with DMT. And honestly, when I started researching this, I thought all roads would lead to the pineal gland and then end of story. I already knew that the pineal gland was involved in producing melatonin. It responds indirectly to light and darkness. It helps regulate circadian rhythm, and symbolically has been connected to the third eye, the seat of the soul, and altered states for a very long time. In regard to the pineal gland specifically, the evidence is interesting. In 2019, DMT was detected in microdialysate from the rat pineal gland using a method designed to sample fluid from living rats. Additionally, researchers reported INMT mRNA in preserved human pineal gland tissue. They used a method called RNA scope to look for the INMT message inside the cells of the gland. Messenger RNA is the copied instructions a cell can use when it is preparing to make a protein. So, if DNA is the stored instructions, messenger RNA is the working copy, and the protein is the final product. In their images, the INMT messenger RNA signal appeared in human pineal sites, the main hormone producing cells of the gland. This means that preserved human pineal cells appeared to carry the working message for INMT, one enzyme associated with DMT synthesis. So when we place the pineal gland back inside the wider human body map, it does not have to carry the whole mystery by itself. It becomes one fascinating part of a larger story. And that brings us to the question, what is DMT chemistry doing in the body, anyways? To answer that, we need to know something important about DMT. When DMT is given from the outside, it acts fast. In human studies with intravenous DMT, peak blood levels were reached within about 2 minutes. The subjective effects came on very quickly, and the effects were mostly gone by 30 minutes. In those studies, zero point 0.2 milligrams per kilogram was the lowest dose that was both hallucinogenic and statistically different than placebo. So DMT is not just powerful, it is fast. It comes on quickly, and the body clears it quickly too. In other human studies, including intramuscular injection studies, DMT peaked in the blood within about 10 to 15 minutes and was essentially undetectable by 1 hour. Only a tiny fraction of an injected dose was recovered unchanged in the urine over 24 hours. This means when the body makes DMT naturally, we may not be looking for something steady and obvious. We may be looking for something brief, local, and easy to miss. There is a concentration problem as well. Levels associated with externally administered psychedelic DMT have been reported in the range of about 12 to 90 nanograms per milliliter. Endogenous DMT has been reported in human urine, blood, and cerebrospinal fluid, but the older measurement history is complicated. A major review looked at 69 studies from 1955 to 2010 and found that the methods were inconsistent, the units were inconsistent, and some early detections were probably less reliable than modern standards would now require. So the question is no longer simply whether DMT shows up in the body, whether we have DMT related chemistry, because we do. The harder question is how much is made, where it is made, when does it appear, and how fast is it broken down. That is why endogenous DMT is such a strange scientific problem. Not because there is no evidence, but because the evidence points toward a molecule that may be fast, local, and context dependent, which makes it difficult to measure accurately. Now let's take a look at what it may be doing quietly inside the body. And honestly, this is the part that I didn't quite expect, because when DMT is taken from the outside at high enough doses, it is just famous for radically altering people's perception. But in the body of research, they have been looking at a wide range of possible effects. We know DMT interacts with serotonin receptors, which helps explain its psychedelic effects. But DMT has also been studied in relation to other signaling systems, including trace amine associated receptors and the sigma 1 receptor. Here, DMT has been identified as an endogenous ligand for the sigma 1 receptor, meaning it can bind to and activate this receptor system. Sigma 1 is involved in cellular stress responses and is connected to calcium signaling. It is often located at the interface between the endoplasmic reticulum and mitochondria, two structures deeply involved in how cells manage energy, stress, calcium signaling, and survival. So when researchers look at DMT through that lens, it no longer looks only like a molecule of altered perception. It starts to look like a molecule that may touch stress biology. In one set of experiments, DMT was also tested on human stem cell-derived cortical neurons, monocyte-derived macrophages, and dendritic cells under severe low oxygen stress. The cells treated with DMT showed higher survival rates, and the effect appeared to depend on the sigma 1 receptor. Other studies have looked at human immune cell models where DMT has been reported to shift inflammatory signaling toward a less inflammatory direction. Researchers reported lower levels of pro inflammatory molecules, including IL 1 beta, IL 6, IL 8, and TNF alpha. They also reported an increase in IL 10, which is generally considered anti inflammatory. This moves DMT out of the category of only perception and into the language of the immune system. Next, let's look at a rat model of focal brain ischemia, meaning reduced blood flow and oxygen to brain tissue. Here, DMT treatment was associated with reduced infarct size, reduced inflammation, and apoptosis, as well as improved functional recovery. Other ischemic rodent work has reported reduced spreading depolarization and neurodegeneration. Spreading depolarization is a wave of disrupted electrical activity that can move through stressed or injured brain tissue. So, the brain protection story here is not vague. Some work also connects DMT to neuroplasticity, which is the brain and nervous system's ability to change. In experimental models, DMT has been reported to affect neuronal structure, including dendritic growth and spine density. Dendrites are the branching structures of neurons that receive signals, and dendritic spines are tiny contact points involved in synaptic communication. This suggests a change to the physical architecture of neural communication. Other work connects DMT to immediate early genes like CFOS, EGR1, and EGR2. These are genes that can switch on quickly after stimulation and help translate an experience into a longer term cellular change. Lastly, some cellular work connects DMT to BDNF related plasticity. BDNF is a protein that helps neurons survive, grow, differentiate, and adjust their connections. So, this gives researchers another reason to study DMT beyond the immediate altered state experience. These examples show that DMT is not just being studied as a perception changing molecule, but as a molecule that may influence neuronal growth, connection, and adaptation. So it's not just DMT makes people see things. This is DMT appearing in research regarding some of the body's most basic biology: oxygen, inflammation, energy, stress, survival, adaptation, and plasticity. Currently, this is experimental, so that does not prove that endogenous DMT is doing all of this in ordinary human physiology, but it also does not mean it isn't. This research shows DMT related chemistry may connect to systems that help cells survive, respond, adapt, and change, not as a single magic molecule, but as one strange piece of chemistry sitting near the edge of perception, stress, survival, and physiology. So I came into this research thinking DMT would mostly be a story about altered states, or maybe one famous gland, or one mysterious molecule. But biology opened into something wider and wilder. DMT is not just something people take from the outside. It appears across biology, including human chemistry, and experimental work is exploring DMT in relation to cellular stress, low oxygen, inflammation, immune signaling, neuroprotection, and plasticity. We do not know everything yet, not even close, but that uncertainty is not disappointing to me. It makes the research and science feel more alive because sometimes the most interesting thing is not finding a final answer. Sometimes it is realizing the question is bigger than you thought. For me, the mystery here has become more distributed, more embodied, and much more interesting. DMT may be famous because it changes perception, but the body seems just as strange because it sits at a crossroad between chemistry and consciousness, between stress and survival, between the body we can measure and the experiences we still struggle to explain. Maybe DMT is not only a molecule that can make reality feel different, maybe it is also a reminder that reality, as we experience it, is still deeply mysterious. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on everything. I'm sure you'll have some great ones. And until next time, stay curious and take care.